Hey everyone, Sophia here. I am so excited to share something with you today that genuinely brightened my entire day. You see, I was feeling a bit down this morning, just one of those days where everything felt a little heavy. I was scrolling through my feed and stumbled across a motivational video, and I thought, why not? I clicked on it, and honestly, it felt like magic. The speaker's words were so inspiring and uplifting. They resonated with me on such a deep level. I felt this wave of positivity wash over me as I listened. It's amazing how a few simple words can completely shift your perspective. It was like someone had opened a window and let the sunshine pour in. You will not believe what happened next. I felt instantly better, lighter, and ready to take on the world. It was such a powerful experience, and I just had to share it with you all. So, let's begin our exciting journey of English improvement together. I release new videos daily focusing on English speaking and listening skills, so I hope you'll join me and enjoy the learning journey. Okay, so, you know how sometimes you just need a change of scenery? Like a proper escape, not just a different coffee shop? Well, I had one of those days last week. Work was work, the weather was this dreary, in-between season thing where it's not quite cold enough for a cozy sweater but definitely too chilly for a t-shirt. You know what I mean? That kind of damp chill that settles right in your bones. Anyway, I felt this overwhelming urge to just disappear for a bit, and where did I find myself? A second-hand bookstore, of course. Not just any second-hand bookstore, mind you. This was one of those rambling, labyrinthine places that smell of old paper and forgotten stories. It's tucked away on a side street, almost hidden, with a faded awning and a window display crammed with books piled haphazardly. I'd walked past it 100 times, always meaning to go in, but something always pulled me away. Until that day, I was like a moth drawn to a flickering lamp. I pushed open the heavy wooden door, it creaked, of course, it absolutely had to creak, and a wave of that unique book smell washed over me. It's a mix of dust and aged paper, maybe a hint of vanilla from some long-gone perfume, and something else. Something indefinable, something almost magical. Do you know that smell? It's like inhaling history, breathing in the whispers of countless readers who held these very books in their hands. The shop was dimly lit, with shelves reaching up to the ceiling, packed tight with books of every size, shape, and color. There were stacks of books on the floor, too, forming little literary islands in the narrow aisles. It felt chaotic, yes, but also wonderfully inviting. Like the books were whispering secrets, begging to be discovered. I wandered in, feeling a bit lost and a bit exhilarated, like I'd stumbled into a hidden treasure trove. There was no system to the organization, or at least none that I could discern. Biographies nestled next to cookbooks, sci-fi epics shared shelf space with Victorian romances. It was glorious anarchy. I started in the fiction section, or what I thought was the fiction section. I ran my fingers along the spines, reading titles that ranged from the familiar to the utterly bizarre. The Mystery of the Missing Marmalade, anyone? Seriously, that was a real book. I chuckled to myself, picking it up and flipping through the brittle pages. It was a children's book, the illustrations charmingly dated. I could almost picture a child, maybe in the 50s or 60s, curled up in a comfy armchair, completely engrossed in the adventures of a marmalade-loving detective. Then, something caught my eye. Tucked away on a lower shelf, almost hidden behind a particularly hefty tome on the history of plumbing, don't even ask, was a slim, green book with faded gold lettering. I reached for it, my fingers brushing against the cool, smooth cover. It felt right. It was a collection of poetry by a poet I'd never heard of, a woman named Alara Thorne. The title was simply, Whispers of the Wind. I flipped it open, and the pages fell open to a poem titled, The Second-Hand Bookstore. Talk about serendipity. The poem spoke of dusty shelves, forgotten tales, and the magic of finding a book that speaks directly to your soul. It was eerie, almost. Like the book had been waiting for me. I knew I had to have it. But guess what? I'd left my wallet in the car. Typical me, right? I'm always forgetting something. I was so disappointed. I considered leaving the book at the counter and running back to my car. But what if someone else found it? The thought was unbearable. So, I did something I rarely do. I struck up a conversation with the bookstore owner. He was an older gentleman with twinkling eyes and a kind smile, perched on a stool behind a cluttered counter. He looked like he belonged there, like he'd grown out of the floorboards alongside the bookshelves. "Excuse me," I started, feeling a bit awkward. "I found this book, and I absolutely love it, but I've left my wallet in my car." He looked at me over his half-moon spectacles, a twinkle in his eye. "Ah, the age-old dilemma," he said, his voice a low rumble. "Don't you worry, dearie. It happens more often than you think." We chatted for a bit, about books, of course, but also about life, the weather, the peculiar charm of second-hand shops. He told me stories about the books he'd encountered, the people who'd passed through his doors, the history of the bookstore itself. It turned out it had been in his family for 3 generations, a silent witness to the changing tides of the city. He had this calm, gentle presence, and I found myself opening up to him, telling him about my day, my need for an escape. He listened patiently, nodding occasionally, offering a quiet word of encouragement or a knowing smile. Eventually, he said, "Tell you what. You can take the book. Come back and pay me another time." I was stunned. "Really?" I stammered. "Are you sure?" He just smiled. "Of course. A book like that needs to be read. It found you, after all. It wouldn't be right to separate you." I thanked him profusely, promising to return the very next day. He waved his hand dismissively. "No rush," he said. "Just enjoy the book." And I did. That evening, curled up on my sofa with a cup of tea, I lost myself in Alara Thorne's poetry. Her words were like whispers on the wind, carrying me to faraway lands, touching on emotions I hadn't even realized I was feeling. It was like the book understood me, like it knew exactly what I needed to hear. The next day, I returned to the bookstore, wallet in hand. The owner greeted me like an old friend. We chatted some more, and I ended up browsing for another hour, leaving with a stack of new-to-me treasures. You know, that experience was more than just buying a book. It was a reminder of the simple joys of life, the joy of discovery, the joy of human connection, the joy of getting lost in a good story. It reminded me that sometimes, the best escapes are the unexpected ones. The ones you stumble upon when you're not even looking. And that second-hand bookstore? It's become my sanctuary, my go-to place when I need to escape the everyday, to reconnect with myself, to breathe in the scent of old paper and forgotten stories. It's more than just a bookstore, it's a portal to another world, a world where time slows down, where imagination takes flight, and where the whispers of the past come alive. And you know what the best part is? It's right there, tucked away on a quiet side street, waiting for me whenever I need it. And honestly, I think everyone needs a place like that, don't you? Okay, so, you know how sometimes you just need a day to yourself? A day where the only plan is to wander, explore, and just soak in the little things. Well, last Saturday was exactly one of those days for me. I woke up with this sudden urge to explore the local cafe scene. It's something I've always meant to do, but, you know, life gets in the way. But not this Saturday. This Saturday was for coffee, pastries, and cozy corners. So, after a quick but delicious breakfast, yogurt with berries and a drizzle of honey, my absolute favorite, I threw on my comfiest sweater, the soft, oversized beige one, and headed out. The air was crisp, that perfect autumn chill that makes you want to burrow into a warm cafe with a steaming mug. It was one of those bright, sunny days where the light catches the colorful leaves just right. Honestly, it felt like the world was giving me a gentle nudge, saying, "Go on, have your cafe adventure." My first stop was this tiny place tucked away on a side street. It's called the Book Nook, and honestly, the name couldn't be more perfect. The windows were steamed up from the brewing coffee, and I could see the warm glow of lamps inside. I pushed open the door, and the bell above jingled merrily. That smell, you know? That rich, earthy coffee aroma mixed with the sweet scent of baked goods. It's pure heaven. There were shelves overflowing with books, comfy armchairs scattered around, and soft jazz music playing in the background. It felt like stepping into a warm hug. I ordered a latte and a cinnamon roll, because, cinnamon rolls, are you kidding me? and settled into a worn armchair by the window. The latte was perfect, that creamy, frothy kind that warms you from the inside out. And the cinnamon roll? Oh, the cinnamon roll. It was warm, gooey, and absolutely decadent. I spent the next hour just sipping my coffee, nibbling on the cinnamon roll, and browsing through the bookshelves. I found this old, worn copy of Wuthering Heights, which I've always wanted to read. It felt like such a serendipitous moment. The whole atmosphere was so calming, so inviting. I could have stayed there all day, lost in the pages of a book and the warmth of the cafe. But my cafe adventure had just begun. My next destination was a place called The Daily Grind, a more modern, minimalist cafe with huge windows and lots of natural light. The vibe was completely different from the Book Nook, but equally charming. They had this incredible selection of single-origin coffees, and the barista, this super-friendly guy with bright pink hair, helped me choose one from Ethiopia. He described the flavor profile with such passion, it was infectious. He even gave me a small sample of their cold brew, which was surprisingly smooth and chocolatey. I grabbed a seat at a communal table, and you won't believe who I saw there. Mrs. Henderson, my old high school English teacher. We hadn't seen each other in years. It was so lovely catching up with her. We talked about books, of course, and about how life had changed since those high school days. It was one of those unexpected, heartwarming encounters that make you realize how small the world can be. After saying goodbye to Mrs. Henderson, I made my way to my third cafe, the Cozy Kettle. This one was a bit further out, nestled in a quiet residential neighborhood. It was a quaint little place with mismatched furniture, vintage teacups, and a roaring fireplace. It felt like stepping into someone's grandmother's living room, in the best way possible. They specialized in tea, so I decided to try a lavender Earl Grey. It was so fragrant and soothing, just what I needed after all the coffee. I paired it with a slice of their homemade apple pie, which was still warm from the oven. While I was enjoying my tea and pie, I overheard two women at the next table talking about a local pottery class. It sounded so interesting. I've always wanted to try pottery, but I've never gotten around to it. So, guess what? I gathered my courage and asked them about it. They were so kind and enthusiastic, and they gave me all the details. It was such a spontaneous, spur-of-the-moment decision, but I signed up for the class right then and there. I felt this little thrill of excitement, you know? Like I was opening myself up to new possibilities. My final cafe stop was a place called The Bean Sprout, a vibrant, eclectic cafe with colorful murals on the walls and live music. The atmosphere was buzzing with energy. There was a local band playing upbeat folk music, and people were chatting, laughing, and tapping their feet to the rhythm. I ordered a simple black coffee, wanting to cleanse my palate after all the lattes, teas, and pastries. I sat at the bar, enjoying the music and the lively atmosphere. I even ended up chatting with the bartender, a woman with bright turquoise hair and an infectious laugh. We talked about everything: music, art, life in the city. It felt so easy and natural, like we were old friends. As the sun began to set, I walked home, feeling a sense of contentment and gratitude. It wasn't just the delicious coffee and pastries, although those were definitely a plus. It was the unexpected encounters, the spontaneous conversations, the little moments of connection that made the day so special. It was about slowing down, savoring the small things, and allowing myself to be surprised. I discovered hidden gems in my own city, reconnected with an old friend, and even signed up for a pottery class. Who knew a simple cafe adventure could lead to so much? It made me realize how important it is to take those days for yourself, to explore, to wander, and to simply be present in the moment. You never know what treasures you might find. So, yeah, that was my day exploring local cafes. It was more than just a caffeine fix, it was a journey of discovery, connection, and pure, unadulterated joy. And you know what? I think I'll make it a regular thing. After all, life's too short not to indulge in good coffee, good company, and the simple pleasure of exploring your own backyard. Don't you think? Hey everyone, learning a new language can feel like climbing a mountain, but remember, even the highest peaks are reachable one step at a time. And sometimes, the most rewarding steps are the ones where we stumble. Make mistakes loudly. That's how champions are made. Think about it. Each mistake is a chance to learn, to grow, to fine-tune your skills. So, don't be afraid to speak up, even if it's not perfect. Your voice deserves to be heard. You know what can be a fun way to practice? Describing your favorite movie scene. You can do it while you're cooking, walking the dog, or even just relaxing. Pick a scene you love, and try to recount it in English, paying attention to the characters, dialogue, and action. It's a simple, engaging way to boost your fluency and vocabulary without even realizing you're studying. Honestly, it feels like magic when you can express those complex emotions and storylines in another language. And you know what? Pausing too long and losing your train of thought is totally normal. We've all been there. You start speaking, and suddenly your mind goes blank. You search for the right words, the right grammar, and then, poof. The thought vanishes. It can be frustrating, I know, but trust me, it's part of the process. Don't let it discourage you. Just take a breath and start again. Do you also find yourself understanding what others say in English, but hesitate when it's your turn to speak? This happens more often than you might think. I remember once I was at a conference, and I understood every word of the presentation, but when it came to the Q&A, I froze. You will not believe what happened next. I actually managed to ask a question, albeit a little nervously. It wasn't perfect, but I did it. Have you ever felt embarrassed while speaking English? It's okay to admit it. It's a shared experience. Share your stories in the comments. Let's connect and support each other on this amazing journey. So, you know how sometimes a smell can just transport you? Like, whoosh, you're right back there, living it all over again. That's what happens to me with the scent of cinnamon. Instantly, I'm 8 years old, standing on a wobbly stool in my Grandma Rose's kitchen, flour dusting my nose, and Christmas carols tinkling softly from the old radio perched on the windowsill. Ah, Grandma Rose, her cookie baking was legendary. Her kitchen, you see, wasn't fancy. Tiny, really, just enough room for the ancient gas stove, a small fridge humming a slightly off-key tune, and a table covered in a faded red and white checkered tablecloth. But during the holidays, it transformed into, well, magic. Pure magic. It always started with the ritual of pulling down the special tin. A big, old, dented thing, painted with faded holly berries. Inside, nestled amongst tissue paper, were her cookie cutters. Stars, angels, reindeer with chipped antlers, Santa's missing a boot. Each one held a story, a memory of Christmases past. I'd trace my fingers over the cool metal, imagining all the cookies they'd helped create over the years. It was like holding history in my hands, you know? Grandma Rose would chuckle, her eyes twinkling like the fairy lights strung around the kitchen window. Choose wisely, little sparrow, she'd say, her voice warm and raspy like autumn leaves rustling. Each cookie cutter holds a wish. Oh, I believe that with all my heart. I'd spend ages deliberating, finally settling on the slightly lopsided gingerbread man, his icing smile chipped but still cheerful. Then came the real magic, the dough. Grandma Rose never used a recipe, at least not one written down. It was all in her head, passed down from her grandmother, she said, a secret family treasure. She'd hum softly as she worked, her hands, gnarled and strong, kneading the dough with a practiced rhythm. The rhythmic thud-thud-thud against the wooden countertop, combined with the sweet, yeasty scent of the dough rising, was mesmerizing. I'd perch on my stool, mesmerized, watching as the flour puffed up in little clouds around her hands. Sometimes, she'd let me help, letting me scoop the flour or sprinkle in the cinnamon. Oh, that cinnamon! The smell would fill the entire house, warm and inviting, promising something delicious. It's a scent I can still conjure up in my mind, clear as day. And then, the rolling. Grandma Rose had this enormous, ancient rolling pin. Heavier than it looked, I can tell you. She'd wield it with surprising grace, the dough yielding beneath its weight, transforming into a smooth, even sheet. I'd try to mimic her, my little rolling pin struggling against the sticky dough, often ending up with more dough on me than on the counter. Grandma Rose would just laugh, wiping the flour from my cheek with a flour-dusted finger. Practice makes perfect, little sparrow, she'd say, her voice full of patience. Cutting out the cookies was my favorite part. I'd press the gingerbread man cutter into the dough, my small hand gripping it tight. Lifting it carefully, I'd reveal the perfectly shaped cookie, a tiny replica of the worn metal cutter. I'd arrange them carefully on the baking tray, leaving just enough space between each one. Sometimes, I'd get a little over-enthusiastic with the cutters, leaving odd scraps of dough. Grandma Rose would gather these up, rolling them out again, showing me how to make little donut holes with a thimble. Nothing went to waste in Grandma Rose's kitchen. While the cookies baked, filling the house with that intoxicating aroma of cinnamon and sugar, we'd sit at the checkered table, sipping hot chocolate, the steam warming our faces. Grandma Rose would tell me stories. Stories of her childhood, stories of Christmases past, stories of faraway lands. Her voice would weave tales of magic and wonder, and I'd listen, captivated, the warmth of the hot chocolate spreading through me like a comforting hug. And then, the moment we'd both been waiting for. The timer on the stove would ding, its shrill sound cutting through the quiet hum of the kitchen. Grandma Rose would carefully pull out the baking tray, the cookies golden brown and perfectly crisp around the edges. Oh, that sight! Rows and rows of gingerbread men, their slightly lopsided shapes adding to their charm. But the baking wasn't over yet. The decorating. This was where my artistic talents, or lack thereof, truly shone. Grandma Rose would have bowls of brightly colored icing, sprinkles of all shapes and sizes, and little silver balls that looked like tiny ornaments. I'd dip my gingerbread men in the icing, sometimes a little too enthusiastically, creating thick, gooey coats. Then came the sprinkles, a riot of color scattered with childish abandon. My finished cookies were, well, let's just say they weren't exactly masterpieces. They were lumpy, bumpy, and often covered in more sprinkles than icing. But they were my creations, and I loved them. Grandma Rose, bless her heart, never criticized. She'd admire each one, pointing out the creative use of sprinkles and the unique icing technique. She'd even hang a few of my more abstract creations on the Christmas tree, right next to her own perfectly decorated cookies. It made me feel like a real artist, you know? Looking back, it wasn't just about the cookies. It was about the time spent together, the shared laughter, the stories, the warmth of her presence. It was about the feeling of belonging, of being loved unconditionally. Those moments in her tiny kitchen, surrounded by the scent of cinnamon and the warmth of the oven, shaped my childhood Christmas memories. They shaped me. Even now, years later, whenever I smell cinnamon, I'm transported back to that wobbly stool, the flour dusting my nose, the Christmas carols playing softly, and Grandma Rose's warm smile. And you know what? It still feels like magic. Pure magic. So, darling, you will not believe what I've been up to. Making chocolates. Yes, homemade chocolates. Me. Can you picture it? Because honestly, a few weeks ago, I couldn't. It all started, as most of my escapades do, with a craving. A deep, dark, rich chocolate craving. But not just any chocolate. I wanted something special, something silky, something sophisticated, something, well, frankly, beyond my budget. You know those fancy artisan chocolates, the kind that come nestled in little velvet-lined boxes and cost more than a small car? Yeah, those. So, I thought, wouldn't it be amazing if I could just make them? Now, I'm a decent baker, cupcakes, cookies, you name it. But chocolate? Tempering, molding, ganache? It felt like stepping into a culinary black hole. But the craving persisted. It whispered to me in the dead of night. It haunted my waking hours. So, finally, I caved. I ordered a mountain of chocolate, dark, milk, white, cocoa butter, fancy molds shaped like seashells and little hearts. Because why not? And a thermometer that claimed to be accurate to the 10th of a degree. I mean, I was going all in. My kitchen became a chocolate laboratory. There were bowls everywhere, pots simmering with mysterious concoctions, and a faint, constant aroma of cocoa hanging in the air. It was glorious chaos. My first attempt? Let's just say, it wasn't pretty. I tried tempering the chocolate, a process that, apparently, is more delicate than brain surgery. The instructions were full of phrases like, seed crystals, and stable beta form, which sounded more like a chemistry experiment than a recipe. I meticulously followed the steps, stirring constantly, checking the temperature obsessively. And guess what? I completely messed it up. The chocolate seized up into a grainy, lumpy mess. It looked less like luxurious ganache and more like, well, you know that stuff they use to pave roads? I was devastated. Chocolate smeared all over my hands, my apron, even my forehead, don't ask. I wanted to chuck the whole lot out the window and drown my sorrows in a bag of supermarket truffles. But then, something shifted. I mean, come on, it was just chocolate. I took a deep breath, licked the chocolate off my fingers, delicious, even in its ruined state, and decided to try again. This time, I watched a bunch of YouTube videos. Shout out to the pastry chefs of the internet. And slowed down. I focused on each step, really feeling the chocolate, understanding its nuances. And you know what? It worked. The chocolate melted smoothly, becoming glossy and satiny. I tempered it perfectly. The snap, the sheen, it was all there. I felt like a culinary alchemist, transforming ordinary ingredients into something magical. Now, filling the molds, that's a whole other story. My first few attempts resulted in chocolates that were either half-filled or overflowing, with chocolate dribbling down the sides like a melting ice cream cone. It was a sticky, messy, hilarious disaster. But I persevered. I learned the delicate art of piping, the gentle tap to release air bubbles, the patience required to let the chocolate set just so. The next challenge? Ganache. Oh, the glorious ganache. I experimented with different flavors, classic dark chocolate, raspberry, salted caramel. Oh my, the salted caramel. I whisked and stirred until my arm ached, but the resulting creamy, velvety filling was worth every bit of effort. And then, the moment of truth. Unmolding. I held my breath as I carefully inverted the molds. The little chocolate hearts and seashells popped out, perfectly formed, gleaming under the kitchen lights. They were beautiful. They were mine. I arranged them carefully in a little box, lined with parchment paper. No velvet, sadly. I took a bite. The snap of the chocolate, the smooth, creamy ganache, the explosion of flavor. It was heavenly. It wasn't just chocolate, it was a testament to my persistence, my willingness to learn, my chocolate-fueled obsession. I called my best friend, practically vibrating with excitement. You have to try these. I squealed. She came over, and we sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by the remnants of my chocolate adventure, and savored each piece. Her eyes widened with every bite. These are amazing, she exclaimed. Better than store-bought. And you know what? They were. Not because they were technically perfect, they weren't. Some were a little lopsided, others had slightly uneven fillings. But they were made with love, with passion, with a whole lot of melted chocolate and a sprinkle of stubbornness. The whole experience, messy and chaotic as it was, taught me so much. It taught me patience, perseverance, and the importance of not taking myself too seriously. It also taught me that sometimes, the greatest rewards come from embracing the mess, from diving headfirst into the unknown, and from allowing yourself to be a beginner. And, of course, it taught me how to make some seriously delicious chocolates. So, the next time you find yourself craving something special, something beyond your reach, consider this. Maybe, just maybe, you can make it yourself. It might be messy, it might be challenging, but I promise you, the reward is worth it. And who knows, you might just discover a hidden talent, a passion you never knew you had. Just like I did, with my little chocolate adventure. So, what are you waiting for? Go on, get messy. And if you need any tips on tempering chocolate, you know who to call. Hey everyone, learning a new language can feel like climbing a mountain, right? But trust me, your future self will thank you for not giving up. Imagine looking back and realizing how far you've come, effortlessly chatting with people from all over the world, accessing amazing opportunities. That feeling is priceless. Every small step you take today is building that future, so keep going. You've got this. You will not believe how quickly progress happens when you stick with it. And you know what? There's a fun little game you can play to boost your speaking skills, even when you're alone. Playing a word association game. Just pick a word, any word, and then say the first word that pops into your head. Then use that new word and do it again. You can do this while cooking, walking, or even waiting in line. It helps build vocabulary and quick thinking, and honestly, it's more fun than you might think. Feeling shy to start conversations? I totally get it. It's like you have all these words swirling around in your head, but the moment you need to use them, they seem to disappear. It's a common experience for language learners, so please don't feel alone in this. Remember, every conversation is a step forward, no matter how small. Speaking of starting conversations, I remember when I first started learning English, I was so nervous. It felt like such a huge challenge. What's one tip you'd give to new English learners? I'd love to hear your thoughts and learn from your experiences. Let's share our wisdom and support each other on this journey. Sharing tips can be so helpful, don't you think? Okay, so, picture this. It's a drizzly Tuesday, the kind where the sky is this thick, gray blanket and the air smells like wet pavement. You know, the kind of day that just makes you want to curl up with a good book and a steaming mug of something warm. Well, I was anything but curled up. I was on a mission. A food market mission. See, I'd recently moved to this tiny little village nestled in the Italian countryside. Charming as a postcard, but, well, let's just say the grocery store selection left a lot to be desired. Canned peaches and suspiciously shiny apples? No thanks. I needed fresh produce. I craved vibrant colors and the chaotic energy of a real market. So, I'd heard whispers of this amazing food market in a nearby town. A place where the grandmothers haggled over plump tomatoes and the air hung thick with the smell of basil and freshly baked bread. It sounded like heaven. Getting there, though, that's a story in itself. The bus schedule, it turned out, was more of a suggestion than a timetable. I waited for what felt like an eternity at this dusty little bus stop, the wind whipping my hair around my face and the rain doing its best to soak through my carefully chosen market outfit. You know, the one you pick out specifically because you want to look effortlessly chic while picking out your perfect heirloom tomatoes? Yeah, that one. Totally ruined. But, finally, the bus lumbered up, groaning and wheezing like a grumpy old dog. The inside was packed. A vibrant tapestry of chattering locals, overflowing shopping baskets, and the faint aroma of something. I couldn't quite place it, but it definitely wasn't roses. I squeezed onto a seat next to a woman clutching a live chicken. Yes, a live chicken. It blinked at me with a sort of knowing look, like, welcome to the adventure. I swear, I'm not making this up. Anyway, after a bumpy ride that involved more near collisions than I care to remember, we finally arrived. And oh, my goodness, it was like stepping into another world. The market square was a riot of color and sound. Stalls overflowing with every imaginable fruit and vegetable, mountains of cheese, glistening olives, cured meats hanging like works of art. The air buzzed with the chatter of vendors hawking their wares, the clatter of pots and pans, and the infectious laughter of families enjoying a midday meal. Sensory overload in the best possible way. I wandered through the stalls, mesmerized. Deep red cherries glistened under the makeshift awnings, their skins practically bursting with juice. Fat, ripe peaches perfumed the air with their sweet, sun-kissed scent. I stopped at a stall piled high with fragrant herbs, rosemary, thyme, oregano, and just breathed in the heady aroma. It was intoxicating. Remember how I said I wanted to look effortlessly chic? Yeah, that went out the window pretty quickly. I was like a kid in a candy store, grabbing at everything, my eyes wide with wonder. I bought a knobbly, misshapen melon because the farmer swore it was the sweetest he'd ever tasted. I filled a bag with plump figs, their skin a delicate shade of purple. I even bought a tiny jar of homemade honey from a woman with twinkling eyes and a smile that could melt glaciers. And the cheese? Don't even get me started on the cheese. I sampled every single one, from creamy ricotta to sharp pecorino, until I was practically buzzing with dairy. But the highlight, the absolute highlight, was the pasta stall. Handmade pasta, draped over wooden dowels like delicate ribbons. Tagliatelle, pappardelle, orecchiette, shapes I'd only ever seen in cookbooks. I must have stood there for a good 10 minutes, just staring, completely overwhelmed by the beauty of it all. The woman running the stall, a stout, no-nonsense lady with flour dusting her apron, noticed my indecision. She gave me a knowing look and, without a word, scooped up a generous portion of bright green spinach and ricotta ravioli. "Try these," she said, her voice gruff but kind. "You won't regret it." And you know what? She was right. They were heavenly. Little pockets of creamy ricotta and spinach encased in perfectly cooked pasta. I bought a bag, and then another, because, well, why not? As the afternoon wore on, the market started to wind down. The vendors packed up their remaining wares, the crowds thinned, and a quiet calm settled over the square. I found a little bench tucked away in a corner and sat down, my bags overflowing with treasures. I pulled out a warm, crusty loaf of bread I'd bought earlier and a wedge of the creamy gorgonzola. The simple meal, eaten under the now clearing sky, felt like a feast. The bus ride back was an experience. Let's just say the live chicken was no longer quite so lively, and the smell of whatever it was had intensified considerably. But I didn't care. I was happy. Exhausted, yes, but happy. I was filled with the warmth of the market, the kindness of the vendors, and the sheer joy of discovering something new. I arrived back in my tiny village, arms aching, bags bulging, and a silly grin plastered across my face. The rain had stopped, and the evening air was crisp and clean. As I walked through the quiet streets, I realized something. It wasn't just the food I'd brought back with me. It was something more, a sense of connection, a feeling of belonging, a reminder that even in the simplest of things, a bustling market, a warm loaf of bread, a shared smile with a stranger, there is magic to be found. You know what I mean? That trip to the market, it wasn't just about buying groceries. It was about experiencing life, connecting with people, and savoring the little moments. It was about finding beauty in the unexpected, embracing the chaos, and allowing myself to get completely, utterly lost in the sensory symphony of it all. And honestly, it was exactly what I needed. It reminded me, in a way I hadn't expected, that even on a drizzly Tuesday, life can be pretty damn beautiful. So, yeah, that's the story of the time I went to a food market. It sounds simple, I know. But sometimes, the simplest stories are the ones that stay with you the longest. Don't you think? Okay, so, you know how sometimes you just get stuck? Like in a rut? For me, it was my morning coffee. Years, I'd been drinking the same old instant coffee, 2 sugars, splash of milk. Predictable, reliable, but boring. Utterly, soul-crushingly boring. Then, one dreary Tuesday, the kind where even the birds sound grumpy, I decided, enough is enough. My coffee routine needed a revolution. A renaissance. Well, you get the idea. I was going on a coffee adventure. My first stop? The internet, of course. Pinterest exploded with frothy, layered concoctions. Instagram was awash in latte art, and blogs whispered promises of coffee nirvana. I felt like a kid in a candy store, a very caffeinated candy store. Where to even begin? I started simple. A vanilla latte. How hard could it be? I already had some vanilla extract lurking in the back of my cupboard. I warmed the milk, frothed it with a little whisk, more like vigorously stirred it. Let's be honest, added my instant coffee, a splash of vanilla, and disaster. It tasted like lukewarm, vaguely vanilla-flavored dishwater. Not the Instagram-worthy dream I'd envisioned. Defeated, but not broken, I realized I needed proper equipment. So, I did what any self-respecting coffee enthusiast wannabe would do. I went shopping. A milk frother, a real one, electric, the works. A French press, a pour-over dripper, and, the pièce de résistance, a burr grinder. My kitchen counter suddenly looked like a barista training center. My first attempt with the French press was an experience. I ground the beans. The aroma, oh my goodness, the aroma. Rich, earthy, chocolatey. It filled my kitchen, a promise of deliciousness to come. I carefully poured the hot water, waited the prescribed 4 minutes, pressed down, and ended up with a cup full of gritty grounds. It was like drinking coffee-flavored mud. Okay, I muttered to myself, spitting out a stray coffee ground. Back to the drawing board. I tried again, this time using a finer grind. Better, much better. The coffee was smooth, robust, with a depth of flavor I'd never experienced before. It was a revelation. I felt like I'd unlocked some ancient coffee secret. You know that feeling? Like you've stumbled upon something truly special? Next up, the pour over. I thought, this is where the artistry comes in. I watched countless YouTube videos, meticulously studying the swirling motions, the bloom, the timing. My first few attempts were messy. Water splashed everywhere, grounds escaped the filter, and my bloom looked more like a sad, deflated balloon. But slowly, with practice, I started getting the hang of it. The coffee from the pour-over was cleaner, brighter, more nuanced than the French press. It was like tasting the individual notes in a complex melody. And then, the latte art. Oh, the latte art. This was my Everest, my white whale. I steamed the milk, practicing my swirling technique, trying to create that perfect microfoam. My first attempts looked less like swans and more like amoebas, lopsided, misshapen, vaguely milky amoebas. I laughed at my own ineptitude, wiping up spilled milk and sighing. But, you know what? I didn't give up. I kept practicing. I watched more videos. I experimented with different pouring techniques. And one day, one glorious, caffeine-fueled day, I poured a heart. A slightly wonky, slightly asymmetrical heart, but a heart nonetheless. I almost cried. I took a picture, sent it to all my friends, and felt a ridiculous sense of accomplishment. It was just a little heart in a cup of coffee, but it represented so much more. It was a testament to my perseverance, my willingness to learn, my embrace of the messy, imperfect process. My coffee journey didn't end there, of course. I explored different beans: Ethiopian yirgacheffe with its bright citrus notes, Sumatran manheling with its earthy, chocolatey richness, Kenyan peaberry with its vibrant acidity. I experimented with different brewing methods, the AeroPress, the Chemex, even the good old mocha pot, rediscovering its charming simplicity. I started adding spices, cinnamon, cardamom, nutmeg. I tried different sweeteners, honey, maple syrup, even a pinch of salt. I learned about water temperature, grind size, extraction time. My kitchen became a coffee laboratory, a place of constant experimentation and discovery. And you know what the best part is? It wasn't just about the coffee. It was about the ritual. The slow, deliberate process of grinding the beans, heating the water, brewing the coffee. It was a moment of quiet contemplation in the midst of the chaos of everyday life. A chance to slow down, breathe, and savor the simple pleasure of a good cup of coffee. The journey wasn't always smooth sailing, mind you. There were burnt batches, overflowing filters, and more than a few coffee grounds accidentally consumed. There were moments of frustration, of wanting to throw my hands up and go back to my old instant coffee routine. But each mistake, each failed attempt, was a learning experience. It taught me patience, perseverance, and the importance of embracing the process. So, what's the moral of the story? I don't know. Maybe it's that even the smallest, most mundane aspects of our lives can be transformed into something exciting and enriching if we're willing to experiment, to learn, to embrace the unknown. Or maybe it's just that good coffee is worth the effort. Either way, I'm glad I took the plunge. My mornings are definitely a lot less boring now. And, who knows, maybe one day I'll even master that swan. Wish me luck. Now, what about you? Any kitchen adventures you've been on lately? Tell me everything. From the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for spending this time with me and for staying connected throughout the video. I really appreciate you being here. If you'd like to hear more about English speaking and listening, and catch our new daily content, I would love it if you would follow, like, subscribe, and share this video. You know, before we go, it made me wonder, when are you planning your next self-care day? It is always so lovely to hear what everyone is thinking about, and sharing your plans in the comments is a wonderful way to practice expressing yourself in English and connect with others. See you tomorrow, and in the meantime, take good care of yourselves and keep practicing.